Okay, here we are with Tchernaya River, a battle I didn't even know existed until I picked this up. I may have heard of it at some point or another. This one is designed by the series designer. And you kind of get the feeling that this series was designed to do this one because there aren't a lot of special rules. The special rules are truly special rules rather than, yeah, I don't like how this system handles things. Which, you saw in Alma right away, the first battle. Yeah, I think we should add, divisional integrity. And you see it in Inkerman too. Just, sure, it may be a valid concern. It should have been put into the series if that's the case, not added as additional rules. The fatigue, I feel like the fatigue in Balaclava was appropriate. I feel like the fatigue in Inkerman is an additional rule, a little bit more complexity. Should have been an optional at best. Anyway. What's up with this one? So, got it set up. Setup was remarkably easy because these are the only pieces I had left. And hey, I have them all, which means I was only one piece short from the entire set that I had to draw in. Okay, we got a few special rules in this. There's an aqueduct in this one, here. And a river. And a stream. The aqueduct, let me just see this, pretty much works as expressed in the original rules and has, in the three of four scenarios, the aqueduct shows up. So, attacking out of it halves your melee strength. Cav and artillery can't enter it, except at the bridges, and there are quite a few little bridges there. Special units. They give the movement allowance for artillery. They put it at 4 for this one. Again, this is kind of weird to infantry and cav have the same movement allowance in all the games, except Inkerman, of course. And Alma. Alma, they gave different movement allowances to whatever they wanted to. But printed them on the counters. But yeah, there was kind of a, hey, let's not do artillery. Horse artillery can always be 7, except Inkerman. But here, the artillery has a movement allowance of 4. Again, it's kind of this weird thing, the artillery is too mobile for this scenario. Look, pick your scale, pick your unit size, whatever, and just go with that. And it just feels weird that games were designed without adhering to the system. The Russians have some engineers. They're a big deal. They're basically defensive only units. If they're disordered, they're destroyed. Their big deal is that they can cross the aqueduct. If they're sitting in an aqueduct hex, they make it equal to a bridge to cross. I think only for infantry. That's the effect of the engineer only affects Russian infantry. Cav and artillery get no benefit crossing the aqueduct. They can't enter an aqueduct normally, so it kind of makes sense. You have a whole slew of different types of artillery in this game, in this scenario. In general, A is your best. We've got H's and stuff like that. We've got weird stuff like an F. Over here, I thought this was with horses. We got the one Russian horse artillery is in with infantry for some reason. It's a mixed force, but Yeah, it's kind of weird. I'm used to horse artillery, from the American Civil War being associated with a cav unit and regular artillery with everything else. But anyway, we do have annoying spaces like we did in Inkerman where there is a garrisoned redoubt. These have a zone of control okay. So they have a fire and a melee strength. They're going to have a morale, I think it's of 3, it may be 4. 3 for fire combat. If they're disrupted or forced to retreat, they're destroyed. And there are destroyed counters that came with this one. You could use them in Inkerman, I guess, as well. Are these going to be as annoying? No, because you can't stack with them. So they're not going to be hidden. Nobody can stack with them. They have a zone of control as if they're an undisrupted unit. No units, Russian or Allied, can ever enter the garrison redoubt unless the hex has a destroyed marker on it, in which case it's just, whatever. Once it's destroyed, the redoubt itself remains. Now, I think they're all Allied, but I'm not sure, because we have one here that feels kind of weird. They all belong to the Allied Empire, yeah. Okay, there is one special terrain effect, which is a town, Churagun. I don't know where I'm going to find it. It's this town. It has some special line of sight issues associated with it. It does not block line of sight between 2910 and 3306 and some others. 2910 is here. I think this must be Churagun as well. And let's see what we have. 3021. Well, now that's just weird. No, we got 2 sets. 2910 and 3306. Which will be up on the hill here. So you can shoot over it. It will block line of sight to stuff on the lower ground. And I think that's what they're expressing there. Now they have another one. It does not block line of sight between 3021 and 3306. Let's look at those. 30, these can't be right. 21. And 33, fine, whatever. Something must be wrong there. 3021 should be 3010. So yeah, again, it's going to be able to see from high ground to high ground over it. I'm fine with that. And I'll just try to keep that in mind rather than the specific hexes. The scenario itself, well, they use this page of information to give an entire breakdown of all the units. This is kind of an interesting thing. There is the designer had trouble finding an order of battle for this scenario, and was able to find only one. And so, if you're interested in anything, it might be hard to find. The victory points. Okay. Infantry, well, unit elimination is going to be the eliminated unit's offensive fire combat strength at a range of 1 hex. So artillery is going to be by its quality. In the case of cav, it's its undisrupted melee strength. If a non-cav unit may not fire offensively, then it gives no victory points. For example, the engineers. There are some victory point hexes, which I forgot about. 2215. I'm going to want to put something down. 2215 is the river hex here. If there's a lot of these, I'm going to be annoyed. 3214. Which is this hex, does not have a victory point marker on it, but it looks pretty important, so, you know, I'm not too worried about that. Each destroyed marker on the map is worth 2 victory points for the Russians for killing the intrinsic garrisons. Each undisrupted Russian south of the aqueduct between 0900, which is down here somewhere, and 3300 over here at the end of the game. So if they take the Fedokin Heights, the Allies get points for killing, for the 2 hexes, and for having a unit in any of the hexes of this town that we had special rules about. That's worth 10 points. 3214 is the more important of the 2 hexes. It's worth 5 points to each player. That's this readout here. The bridge here is only worth 2 points to each player. And then determination is the Russians, the Allies have to get more points than the Russians by a little bit, but maybe not so much, because if the Russians want to get high levels, they have to get a lot of points. And that's going to be subtract one person's victory conditions from the others. There is an ahistorical scenario and a historical scenario. The historical scenario the Russians lose. The Russians are the first player. It's 15 turns in length, and the 4th and 5th infantry divisions can't move until game turn 6, or until an enemy moves adjacent to them. I don't know which these are. Okay, I can't find them. Fuck. I can't see. So the counters on this particular one are worse aligned than any of the others. The backs of the counters show the numbers relatively well. The fronts, the unit designation is almost unreadable. So they say 5th and 6th. There is no 5th and 6th. Wait, those are French. Okay, 6th is here, 5th is there. So 5th is in 1302. Okay, 5th and 6th. So there's some 4th up there. There's some 5th up there. I'm going to want to turn those. Let me come back after I do that. The increment, it's not like just a big block of forces. 5th is up here, 6th is over here. This unit is not, though. So what do we got? Oh, but I lied. It's 4th and 5th. It's all this stuff. I'll be back again. So I turned them all. They are in a solid block. They're the Russian reserve. Now, this is an interesting factor. The game is like, the designer says, yeah, if you give the Russians their reserve right off, they've got a pretty good chance of winning the battle. They're not going to make the same, they've got a lot of strength. And it brings to mind something about so many war games, which is that reserves just are not respected in wargaming in general. It's usually good enough to be fastest with the mostest or whatever. You just bring everything in and don't worry about saving reserves. They don't have any particular advantageous flavor to them. Now, some of that is because this system is relatively simple. Unlike some of the other scenarios, and it's not taking into account fatigue and all that. Anyway, units of the French 1st and artillery reserve can't move until turn 5. if an enemy unit moves adjacent or fires on them, they can then move. The Sardinian reserve can't move until turn 3. We're going to put this here, and we're going to worry about those a little later. There is a tiny little bit of designer's notes here, which talks about the difficulty with the OOB, and then gives player's notes, which largely are to the degree of the Russians need to concentrate their forces, otherwise they're going to get fucked. They attacked over a broad span. Some of me says, but you know, I want to take this and this, and I kind of have my forces spread out to do that kind of work. The Sardinians are kind of weak, so I'm hoping this stuff can handle it. For the Allies, as far as I remember, they pretty much say the Allies have to, like, play perfectly. Okay, thanks. But it then goes into that they are really outmatched by the size of the Russian units. And take a look at some of these. We got a 10 strength point here. I know there was a 12 up here. Their melee strengths are huge. But remember how flimsy these things are to concentrated fire from smaller units. Now, you don't have a lot of really good fire units here. You got a fair amount of 4s and 5s, and then the Sardinians are kind of weak. Well, maybe not. I thought they were weak. Well, that is, but no, they're not bad. They're listed as Sardinians, but they're the Kingdom of Savoy, and that's clear by, like, designations. Anyway, it's the same thing. It's the same family. So anyhow, I'm gonna get started at some point soon. Maybe be able to dissipate the angst that I have about the things that I was not able to do, that I finally, like, you know, it takes me a fucking week to get my mind together, like, and decide, okay, I'm going to do this thing that's not supposed to be particularly hard. And then in this case, well, it's turned out more complex, but that's all the more reason to get started earlier, right? Yeah, it's just not the way I work. I don't know if it's, you know, ADHD or something else, you know, or just, you know, whatever. But it really, really fucks with my existence in just about everything. Like, you know, I'm out of... I need food. I need to be able to take care of these things, which, you know, I was thinking tomorrow I would go out and get it notarized and stuff. Well, no, tomorrow I'm going to have to end up getting, if I can do it tomorrow, getting the information that I don't have. I could do things a little more wise and fill out everything that I do have. That would be a clever thought, and maybe I've got enough going that I can do that. I put it all aside because I'm like, you know, there's just, it's so many forms and there's so much instructions. It's like doing your taxes, and then it's like, and I do those electronically now because it's just easier. And you know, then something gets in the fucking way. That's kind of like taxes too. Oh, I need this special form, and I don't have a printer now. Here to hide in my gaming again. You know, every time I try to do something, I fuck it up worse. So I made the same mistake that I knew I made last time, but I figured I could fix. That maybe there was a way around it, which is I didn't get something notarized. Okay, great. Well, I made the same damn thing. I signed it because they're on different pages. The notary page is a different page. So I'm just going through and I'm like, okay, they want my signature. I had already known I should check this, but I try to do things when I'm distracted so that I can fucking cope. And yeah, I did that. I also screwed something else up. And like I said, I don't have all the information that I had before because I don't have the death certificate anymore because they wanted that last time. If they could have just sent me the things that weren't correct, but they sent me everything again and made me fill it all out again. And it's like the frustration of doing it for a third time is feeding into it and everything. Fuck. This is how life is. I try to do something and I will fail. And the more effort I put into it, the worse it starts to get. Anyway, here we are. I don't know who goes first. I think it tells me, but I'm not sure where. The Russians go first. All right. I want to get the French units and the Sardinians, for that matter, slid around. So, what do we have? Well, we have the Russians there. Units of the French 1st Division and Artillery Reserve may not move until game turn 5. It doesn't tell you who these are. The entire 1st and Artillery Reserve do not get to move, only that particular unit if it gets released. Reference to 1st Division is to the 1st Division of the Reserve Corps. Well, that doesn't fucking help me. There's a 1st Division. That's cool. I think there's more units to it somewhere. There's one. And there's another one. Okay. Now the artillery is more complicated. What do they say here? The artillery reserve referred to is listed under the 1st Cavalry Division. There are no restrictions other than on other units listed under the 1st Cavalry Division. So I've got 1st Cav here. Then I've got like an artillery which is part of the 2nd Corps that's under the 1st Cavalry. There's nothing embedded with them. I think it's these things marked AR here. And that should be 5 units, all artillery. The Imperial Guard, we gotta flip these things to see them. This is one. This is one. These are not under the cavalry in any sense that I can determine. This is part of the 1st, so I'm assuming that can't go either. And these are both ARs. So I think that's what they mean by artillery reserve, is AR. Now if I look here, I probably can find it under this information. 1st Division of Reserve Corps. It's up here that they mean. And it's all the AR units, which is what I thought. Now, the Sardinian Reserve may not move until game turn 3. There is no specification about what that is. So again, I think I look here, and that's the units with an R on them, which I think are going to be back here, but I'm not sure. I'll find them and turn them upside down too. Forced to use the poorly printed counters, but we're not able to use the thing. What we need to use is, hey, this is why all this information on the entire order of battle is actually present, because it's the only way that you can find out for these couple of rules. But it's a lot of information, and it's just historical information, so I figure it's not really part of the rules, even though it is, because I only need to peek out a couple of pieces from it that could have been marked in some other way. Some little marker here to indicate that it was only movable after a certain time, or something like that. All right. I wanted to know that first before I move my Russians, so I have an idea of where what units are not going to be able to respond to my movement and what I want to do with them. So for my setup, and I don't even know if this makes any sense, but I arranged so that all my artillery can hit this. It's going to be 2, 4, 5, 6. It's going to be like an 8 fire. I don't need that much, so I can move some of my artillery forward there. I'll probably move this guy in the backup. These others, this division, I'm planning on trying to come from behind the Sardinians here. I dispatched this to take this out. I want to get the crossing there. I can't see just focusing everything on the Sardinians. There just isn't enough frontage. Here I could shoot this and get a guaranteed hit on him. But I can get the extra hex because I'm going to have 10 to 1 odds against him. He fired. He can't do anything. I mean, he can't fire. With a 3 morale, I'm going to get a hit on them. So no matter what, melee makes more sense. So I'll withhold my fire so that I can advance. Up here, similarly, I don't know why I didn't move my artillery. I could withhold my fire. I took some artillery fire here that could have... it's 1 point from artillery, 1 point from this. There was a possibility I could be disrupted by that. But yeah, again, 9 to 1 or whatever on a steep slope, I'm going to get an effect. So let me move some more artillery forward there. Realize one of the problems is most of my units are in very good terrain. I don't know that I particularly want to move up here. What does that aqueduct do? Melee strength is halved, but their firepower is not improved. I might be better moving up, and I can shift some forces over to take the defensive there. The Sardinians, I think they're in as good a place as they can be, honestly. A little iffy about is these artillery here are totally screened, and these guys are mostly screened, but I'm expecting to be pressed pretty hard from back there. I do have a chance. I don't think I did have a chance. I took the shot already. The Russians also had a chance to maybe do something with their artillery, although I don't think so. They're sitting in the town there. I shifted my forces over here. I pushed my cav over there. That's going to put me on game turn 2, and we've started playing this one, so I can mark it up on BGG as played. I have better feelings about this one than any of the others, just because it's the closest to the basic rolls. Battery did not charge. As we roll into the second turn, you know, when I fuck something up, it's like it throws me off. It's going to take me like a week to recover from this, you know? And it's like, I got to go shopping this week. And I'm worried that, like today now, it's coming on 6 a.m. I have not slept at all tonight. I had been doing things so that I could be awake during the day, so I could do something tomorrow, do something, whatever. And now, I don't know. But anyway, let's move some Ruskies. It's kind of funny. These Fs, first of all, are relatively powerful guns. You know, they can do a 5 at range 1. But then the Sardinians themselves are potent units. Decent firepower, decent melee, which screws the Russians over in terms of being able to do anything to them. And then a pretty good morale as well. I'm surprised that they're this good. Italians have a reputation, right? I don't think I'm just going to be able to brush through this shit. I think I'm going to have to come in from both sides at once. Despite what I said before, I got my Russians trying to come from both sides to pick this piece off, moving up closer with some of them, covering with some infantry so that the artillery is protected from counter battery, although it really isn't. I can target the artillery anyway. So I'm being kind of stupid there. I'm also making an attempt with this cav to push right across. We'll see how that works. I've got some counter battery options here. It can't fire yet, but the F gun has to make a decision as to what it's going to shoot at. Fired at the guys crossing the bridge, along with this, and that did not work. Got some fire here, and that was successful, reducing that, and I knocked that gun, didn't knock it out. All I did was disable it, for whatever that's worth. It might fall back now on its next chance to move, if it gets another chance. Killing guns is well worth doing. Especially a big A, that's worth 8 points victory point wise. But the big thing is, that's the kind of stuff that can clear this. Now the Russians get 2 melees. This one here is going to be a 1-to-1 in the clear. But I'm a 4. And that's not going to be good. That is going to be a retreat with a disorder, which will send the unit behind it back as well. Attack is just going to fucking fail. I've got 15 going against, and I don't have to throw him in, and I may not. But let's say I have 9 going against 9. That's a 1-to-1 on the steep slope, and I'm only a fucking 2, so I'm in a lot of trouble there. 1, 2, 3, 4. I get away light is what happens. I retreat and I'm flipped. There is some weirdness here because a 1 is not here. But to make a difference between the 1s and the R, it has to be a disruption. Unless 8.4, a 1, 2, or 3 requires it's disrupted and retreated. Yeah, I didn't remember that there was a correction on that. Oh, that's not good. I don't know where this is. I think 6. I get to try to recover at least. Got lucky with full recovery, and now I can throw my artillery in on defensive fire, which might give me a little bit more of an edge towards shaking things up. That's kind of the thing. You got to push forward and hope you survive and can do something. What do I do with the Allied forces, though? It's a good question. Like, do I want to move up here, face an H gun, which is not that powerful? That D could be thrown in too, though. That's another 2 points. Or do I just want to hold my position and, kind of hope for the best? Tough call. And then, again, I don't want to move the Sardinians because they're in a really good position, conceivably. It could come down and try to fight, but it seems like a bad idea. Just rely on the artillery to do the best it can. The only thing the Allies are doing is the French are throwing their cav up here to threaten the back of this, force the Russians to try to do something to protect themselves a little bit or whatever, because the cav could do some serious damage, especially to the artillery back here. It's just putting them in a trickier bind. And now we get our Russian defensive fire. Russians were able to silence one of these guns, which is a big deal, but this gun chased the Russians back. This looks like a really, really tough defensive position, not what I'm used to in this series, where I can just push units forward. You really have to you kind of have to get lucky, it looks like. Now I don't know, You know, maybe I can go around this way or something, but who knows? Anyway, this is at the end of fire. There is no melee, and the Allies get a recovery on the one unit that got damaged, which does recover. Wasn't expecting it to be this ugly. The Sardinians are really good units. And push up to there. I'll plug my battery in and I'll try to read myself to sleep, I guess. Neighbors get Christmas lights out. I think there was some elsewhere in my line of vision. The angst and frustration and whatever with what I've done has made life, like, it's made it even harder to come up here, or it's made it hard to come up here. That's why a lot of times you see delays for me. I'm burying myself in my computer games, or reading or sleeping or whatever, because I can't have time where my mind is able to work. I forced myself up here. It's like Tuesday night, got my garbage out. And that's about it, you know. And my sleep schedule is now fucked up so that, like, I probably am going to have difficulty, more difficulty going shopping, and I got to do it in the next couple days. Tough situation. I don't know how I'm going to crack these Sardinians. I do feel like I just need to focus all my effort on them, basically, to get them out of the way, to get the points for that. The bridge, that's relatively easy. I just have to fight over that, you know. But these Sardinians in this particular barrier is going to be rough. So far, we don't have any deaths yet, but geez, that's yeah. I mean, I can't go an across-the-board assault on them, but I don't know. I can try. I'm moving some artillery up. Part of the problem is, oh, I gotta get this guy somewhere more useful than, well, he may have moved there. I'm trying to concentrate some artillery here. I'm gonna move this gun forward. He hasn't moved yet. I'm slipping a gun near here, getting another one close. They can't fire, but I'm just hoping to, you know, get some kind of purchase up there, and that'll help loosen things up. But I mean, there's more targets than the Sardinians can hit, is one of the issues. Maybe we are overwhelming them. This is the result after fire. The guns that I have in placed up here aren't doing me any good. I've got to concentrate these Fs together. I moved them a little closer, but the Russians are getting an artillery concentration that is dangerous to me. Let's shoot back. Managed a big success. We took, I guess, this hex? This hex? I think this hex. No, it couldn't have been. It's this one. And have cut our way into one of those Sardinian spaces. It's a tough slog. We had a few units get flung back from the fire, but this system kind of rewards attack. I had a 50-50 chance of taking the hex in the melee phase. So, I mean, not that much. I had 2-to-1 odds, you know, but it does feel like it sometimes seems easy comparatively to take a location. Now, I believe we are getting our Sardinians in this turn. As we look through game turn 3, sure. So the Sardinian reserve is coming in. The next reserve is the French, which will be turn 5. And this turn 6, I think, is the Russian stuff. I seem to have put my Russian game turn marker in one of the battles. That's fine. Wow, the battery's low. We're trying to fill in the gap here, moved some artillery into place to support. the horse artillery as well, shifted these guns down, and the cav wasn't able to get a 2 units on 1 attack anywhere, so I just shifted them into position to be better able to do that. And the Russians will probably fall back from them if they're so focused on this. Although they've got to be careful because we don't want to lose that bastion. I've got to swap batteries and we'll take care of the fire and melee even perhaps. Optimistic for this early in the battle, and this battery did not charge fully either. Russians managed to take out a gun here. I had an artillery here that could do counter battery fire, but I couldn't quite figure out how to get good fire on enough units, and I ended up kind of wasting it against a shot way back here. We didn't get one of the guns, and that's going to be a little problematic for us. And the Sardinians got some decent fire against the Russians with their artillery in place and whatnot, managed to disrupt or retreat, or retreat, everything that was next to them. But then I made an attack here at like 3-1 on a minor slope. It's not very likely. I got a 1. A 1 or a 2 would be bad. That was the problem. And ended up having to retreat both of these units. Now they get a chance to recover, but I've just this gun is left hanging, and I'm kind of fucked because of it. Was it a chance worth taking? I don't know, because it doesn't matter much as long as as long as I had these guys disordered. It's not that big a deal. Like, they have to walk away and other units have to cycle in and everything. But I thought I could get like a cheap kill out of it or something. It's just a bum idea from my point of view. Thanks to light, the allies have to play perfectly or they're in trouble. Anyway, gonna break there for a bit. Let's throw some troops forward to try to deal with the cav. It can just run away. It's not going to get shot or anything, but it feels like at least I'm kind of extending my line or something. I don't know. It's not going to do me any good. But over here, we're really concentrating on taking this hex. Some fire from artillery and whatnot might help elsewhere, but we've got a huge amount of fire concentrated here, more than we need by far. We can throw some in here instead. But yeah, I might be able to shoot this guy up. I don't know. Make some good ground. They shoot this thing out of the way, drive somebody back here. A little bit of effect over here. Not a hell of a lot, but to get the kind of concentration that I feel I need against the Sardinians, I have to go real slow everywhere. And that'll put it on the Allied turn. It's going to be hard to hold this, and we can see the Sardinians are beginning to take losses. To the extent that taking this might be enough to win me the game, to be honest. Like, over the course of time. This thing is... I don't remember the victory conditions, that's the problem. This whole series has just got these kind of not easy to keep track of victory conditions. Obviously, I've got kills, but this is the more valuable of the two. This is the 5-point hex. The town is not going to fall easily to the Allied forces. We can get a more expansive victory by pushing further, but we could kind of just put it in our pocket by just taking this, I think. Obviously, in a battle, you don't go for, yeah, that's the goal, I won it, and let's just let them, get away easy. But there are a lot of French reinforcements that are going to come up. Might make the job a little harder, but probably not so hard that the Russians can't hold this. The question, of course, is do we want to push, south of the aqueduct and get all the points for that? Historically, the Russians lost this one too. So, I don't know. A whole hell of a lot for the Allied forces to do. I don't want to pull this cannon out because he could still be shot conceivably, but he won't be able to do much from back here in terms of counter battery fire and such not. Right now, though, the French are, I don't know, I should just pull them back. I should just pull them back. Let's hide him under that infantry too, because he's not going to be able to fire from there. And if we're going to do that, it might actually make sense to pull this one back too, because I can't fire just one of those cannons. These guys are going to be available very soon, and then I'll have a lot more artillery to face this. The Cav is making a foray up here to see what it can do. Hide from counter battery fire, so I don't know why I've got them on the bottom. I did nothing on either side. Over here, the Cav successfully retreated the Russians, but again, not too big a deal. I need to roll recovery, and that's it. So back up here, it's Jesus. It's got to be Wednesday already, I think. Barely. Before I start playing, I'm reading a book, an old science fiction book, as I so often do, and not for the first time. Now, it may all be the same person. It looks like the same lettering. In various books that I've picked up from the little free library that I've gotten this one from, at absolutely kind of inappropriate points, it doesn't even match the circumstances or whatever. There's like right-wing talking points thrown in. So the one I'm reading right now is about after a nuclear holocaust, and he's blaming, like, and there's, one character questioning why, how society could have collapsed. And then scrawled right next to it is the Democratic left. Now, everybody knows in this book, which was written back in the 50s, everything in the book it's clear that it was a nuclear holocaust, and it has nothing to do, with any of this. And then a little later on, there's another one, and it's like, and it's not all over the book. It's just so far in one page, there's like 3 of these. But it's just this weird thing. It's like somebody got off their Fox fix and were reading, at that point, and a couple of key phrases triggered something in their little brains. But it really shows the cult-like effect it has on anybody. I've never seen anything but right-wing shit in these games. Like one of them talks about, how did we lose history? Well, they lost history the same way that it's really almost a medieval society that comes after the Holocaust. And that's how they lost their history, is through, the collapse of civilization and all this. And he's got 1619 written next to that. It's just like, no. Anyway. All right, so here we are. I've already got the French triggered there to bring them in. Turn 6 is the Russians. And then, but right now it's the Russian movement. We've positioned ourselves to make an assault on this unit now, and getting ready for the final attack on the bastion itself. And we've surrounded a cav and got, now this puts the French in an interesting position. They can't retreat this cav, but they could run these 2 away. But these 2 provide some defense versus this guy. Like, they could strip this guy out, But I think 5-1 is pretty bad, so we're just going to pull away. And since we don't get defensive fire anyway, I might as well just do it. Artillery we have in place here, we were able to disrupt one and drive the other unit off. So this attack isn't going to happen, but there is the firepower and counter battery fire and stuff like that that's going to weaken this position, I hope. Not that much after melee and recovery. This guy got beat up and we destroyed the French cav, but that's it. And that puts it on the French turn, which, you know, they're going to try to recover a defensive position here, I guess, but they've got kind of a problem. This thing recovered, so I could shoot it, and I think I will, and have a good chance of getting it out of there or even killing it. And we do what we can here. We push forward here, and we pull the cav back, distracting these units, whatever it did. It cost us a cav unit, which is not cool. Other stuff trying to make its way on. Not a lot of advantages by the Allies. They were able to hit this, and that's it. They weren't able to find any decent counter battery fire because there's kind of a ridge in here. The Russians did some damage here, killed one of the French cannon coming up. And that's going to put us on turn 6, where the last of our little game turn markers resides, and that means the Russians are coming in with their final command. I don't know. So historically, the problem, I think, is the Russians attacked across the board. You really have to focus all the units you can get to try to breach here or here heavily. I felt like this was the more important, better one to get because it gets me some at-J, as I put it, on that position, although with all the Sardinians in the way, I don't know if it really does. And you could make an argument that you could swing this way and come from behind on the redoubt. Conceivably, it's a long game. I don't feel like more units would necessarily, I mean, they wouldn't hurt, right? But this is a tough crossing, especially now that all these guns are in place. And that's kind of the thing. The Allies get release of units that allows them to feed into the fight and make things a little bit more interesting. But look, the Russians have won, you know. They take this, it's pretty much over. It's just a question of how hard, whether they want to risk their win in their pocket for something more dramatic, and of course I would. Well, I got an email back from my brother, and he hasn't even started filling out the damn forms, which is ridiculous. I mean, we have to get them done in the next 6 months, basically, but it's like, I just, knowing how much I've screwed up, I want to get it done quickly. I haven't gotten anything back from the agent or whatever who I tried to email. All right, you know, this is just, I don't think my dad has this problem, but my mom had it really bad with like just letting things slide and whatever, and apparently I'm not the only one who inherited it. Fuck. I always thought he was more on the ball and normal than I am, but my dad did warn me about stuff that, like, yeah, he's... Anyway, let's get some Russians moving. This is the turn where they get to bring their last command into play. Okay, so preparing an attack against the breastwork, but also to take out this gun that's up there, which, if this thing survives, it will pretty much be able to do. Holding here with my artillery, I don't know what really to do. I'm not strong enough to force a crossing, but these guys might be. And pursuing those cav, they're just going to run away. I think it's pretty clear that I can't really face the force that's been sent after them. Fire was not very effective at all. Here, I don't even have the guns set up so that they can do much. Then again, the French can't do much to me, so whatever. But here, I got 1 in 6 chance to make the successful attack, and the melee succeeded. So I took the redoubt. Now, I'm not in great position. These are going to probably shoot me out of there, but it does mean that the hex kind of remains empty and the Russians can pull forward later. Now, if they only injure me, and this may be a matter of trying to figure out the number I want to roll, because each F gives 5 firepower. 5 firepower hits 50-50 on the 3, but on 2 of those, it falls back. And 8 firepower is automatically successful, but 2 successes, I'll leave that broken there. So I want to throw both guns in, as well as, put melee units in to try to retake the breastworks. It feels weird that, like, more firepower means you can't take the hex. I don't know. it just feels odd to me. There should be some kind of advancing fire type of option or something like that. So the Sardinians push themselves forward. It's really hard to, like, I could escalate this by pushing my guns forward, but then I'd bring more of the Russian guns into play. It's basically, they're at a long-range artillery duel doing almost nothing, but if they move any closer, they're going to give an advantage to the enemy, either side. The power levels I calculated don't work, because the Russians were able to shoot this thing out with some artillery support here. They did work, because I got 5 infantry here, which equals the same value, but the redoubt hit here. So it's actually was the 7 column, which is the same. It gave me 2 shots, and I get the advantage of knocking that unit to a disordered state, where it didn't retreat, and now I get to attack it. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, there's something funky about the way the system works. And we end the turn with the Sardinians retaking the breastworks, which is kind of cool. This is kind of what I expected out of Inkerman, was fighting back and forth over the same terrain. Well, here the forces are more equal and can actually do this. But we're down a cannon, and the Russians are going to be able to start bringing some cannons up over the ridge so that they can hit that and this and whatever. They just have overwhelming force, whereas the Sardinians are running out. They're down in artillery, they're down, and if they put a gun up here, it just gets shot out probably as more and more power starts getting put in there. So we may have lost the breastwork, even though we're not quite there yet. But I feel like we have to keep throwing ourselves in, trying to cost the Russians. But there's not really a big cost to attacking. This firepower is not going to do much. See, this is the whole thing. You make a charge at someone, right? And against extreme firepower, they're going to have a result on you. That result, either you're flung back with essentially no losses, or you're disordered standing in front of them and you no longer have to melee attack. Now, if you are stuck standing in front of them, you potentially undergo another round of fire, which can kill you, or another melee attack. But it doesn't quite feel like it handles the fire combat right. And in a way, I think that actually disturbs me more than like the games that leave the firepower out. I do like that the firepower randomizes and makes it so you can't pre-calculate and get on the right odds table every single time. You have this sort of, hey, there's some tricky stuff here before you get to this. And this is also relatively random as well. So it's not like the Napoleon at Waterloo type, or most of the quads in terms of how they resolve combat. It's got less of you've got less of an ability to ensure that you've got a good attack or know that you're fucked, right? But it's creating what look like less realistic and believable outcomes than either the simpler or more detailed games tend to do. Still focusing their attack over here. The additional forces, a lot of them are heading this way to try to make a crossing here, try to degrade the Sardinian position, which is a little weaker, but is needed to feed into this. And then I also cross here. I'm moving a lot of artillery up to this front line, though, to try to get some advantage there so that I can eventually cross there. Remember, this bridge is the other valuable location, although not as valuable as the redoubt. It's largely ineffectual across the board. Did drive a unit away here, but the Russian melee managed again a 1/3 lucky shot to get up into there. And, you know, I mean, we're running out of artillery and whatnot. It's getting harder and harder for the Sardinians to stay there, although when they are in there, they are pretty potent and steady against, you know, this was a 3-to-1 attack, but it required going through the redoubt, and we're looking at a 3 morale for the attack. Actually, I think I actually screwed up, but whatever. And not that they shouldn't have gotten it, but that they had a better chance. Let me see. Oh no, 3-to-1 was here, yeah. So there were 2 retreats at the bottom end of it that they could get. And, you know, if the Sardinians can't get that hex back, it's eventually going to fall to the Russians. And the problem is, the Russians get a shot at this, and I got some artillery that I can throw in there, so it's a fairly decent shot. There's a fair chance that I can destroy that artillery. Disabling it probably doesn't do much. I'm going to try to teach the Russians a lesson for crossing the river here, as well as the Sardinians continuing their fight. This is pretty much a standstill right now. And it's not a huge, oh well, first of all, the French drove them back. I thought I had them caught. No, there was an escape hex. Over here, I think I kind of screwed up, because I didn't fire at either of these, so I had to melee both of them and got thrown back here. Here I was able to clear the hex with the heavier fire that I had, but clearing the hex isn't really what I want to do, because that means the Russians can reoccupy it on their attack turn. And I do have to, though, bring these artillery up, which I didn't have to because the Sardinians made their way back into the redoubt, which meant that I could see them and could shoot them. Okay. Well, couldn't fall asleep easily yesterday, or today, whatever. It was like 7 or 8, I think 7 before I got to sleep. And then it was basically dark when I woke up, and everything's just getting so fucked up. I mean, not based on that, but like, I don't know what the hell's going on in so many ways. I'm up here to try to play this because, I don't know. Not that I want to. But I mean, tomorrow's the last day I can go shopping. And I just don't understand anymore. So the Russians are trying to power their way through the Sardinians here, but also getting themselves to cross the river. We haven't made it yet, but we're getting close to it so that we can threaten and then attack across, get across the aqueduct and try to take things from this side. These guys fell back. I'm holding these in reserve between the two forces. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with them yet. What about that sea artillery? This guy here. See, I don't have enough firepower to do anything useful, but I can't really face all of this. I decided to heavily shift my artillery to support these attacks. Give this up, except as a defensive position. Now, the French could try to attack it, but they could end up on the wrong side of the river in that kind of case. Defensive fire, very ineffective. We did drive someone off of here, which is something. Because otherwise this position would probably fall too. The Russian attacks fling me back off of the breastworks. I was successful here, fired these down. This success I didn't want to advance into. Felt like that's pushing too far. I don't know. Making it too easy to kill that unit, or at least drive it back. But a lot of this is pushing units back and forth rather than any kind of kills. Although we did manage to kill one of the French artillery up here with some lucky fire. Problem, if the Sardinians move up into here, they're going to get shot right out of there. Almost guaranteed. So it's not worth trying to take. But it is the goal. So, like, how do I even work around these circumstances? Like, occupying that, I'm not going to be able to occupy. Any advance I make forces me to make attacks, which put me in an ugly position. This is something very similar to the Napoleon at Waterloo type games, but the thing is, usually if there's like defensive locations there or whatever, you're not required to attack out of them. Here you are, and it makes it a really, really ugly situation. I'm going to look up, make sure that the bastions don't negate the requirement for attack. I would still have to attack this unit, but that I could cope with. The one place that zones of control wouldn't force an attack, and you're actually not even allowed to attack, is cliff hexes. I'm like, what? Never heard of those. And they're in this scenario. And then I'm like, oh shit, am I missing something? Not really. They're along there. Okay. I'm not seeing anything of course, I haven't hit melee yet. Melee, because this wouldn't negate the zone of control. This would, I don't know. I'm just trying to find something. I don't see it in the redoubt, but I'm not sure. It might be placed somewhere else. It's a little wrong to me that you're forced to fight. You're forced to go over the redoubt and push the enemy away. That just feels wrong. But I can't find anything that contradicts that. And my mind is mush right now, a reaction to the way I feel beaten up in terms of I don't know what I can do and I don't know what I can't do in my personal life. It does bleed into the games quite a bit. And right now I'm just like, I can't think. My brain is totally like failing me, like just a fog. Connection's not working, all kind of stuff going wrong. Anyway, I'm fighting through it as best as I can. I had to do this at work when I had COVID fogs as well. This feels different, but I don't really recall it well enough. But like I said, going into here is dangerous. Going into here is no good because it's an aqueduct. Actually, probably shouldn't even be here, but defending in an aqueduct is okay. Attacking out of one is horrible. So I'm trying to gain what I can, and this gives me some structure if they cross the river that helps a little bit. Though to be honest, let's do something like that instead. Over here, I moved my artillery back up, but it's in danger there. I just don't know what to do. If I don't position my guns on the hill, I'm not going to be able to defend against a Russian attack, but their artillery is going to wear me down. This is the one bonus I have, is this shit that moved across the river, I guess, is a bit weakened, and I can try to get some advantage on it, but there's these guys patrolling out there. They're going to cause me trouble. My cav isn't really able to do shit. Yeah. Russian counter battery fire here was not effective, but this hex again got blown away, and we destroyed another French gun trying to move up. I can't just keep throwing them in there. It's not great odds either. It's over on the 7 table, so it's 50-50 whether it's disordered, but only a 1/3 chance to destroy it. But yeah, well, French get to fire back, I guess. Oh, this guy got neutralized by a lucky shot. Fire not particularly effective. I just don't have enough firepower to do anything to these big guns up here. These Fs, they're good at close range, but at any kind of distance, they start sucking pretty bad pretty quickly, and then they turn into nothing, whereas these A's and B's are heavier guns that are being able to clear this. I managed to get this, but I couldn't do any counter battery of any value with that F. It's just, even 2 hexes is just a 3. A 3 against a 4 can't hit it. And no melees. I have to do my recoveries. We did drive these away, got our first kill of the game. But I gotta tell you, I don't know, obviously I probably am not playing my allies perfectly, but they're also, there's a luck factor in here too. But it does seem like the Russians have the advantage as long as they play somewhat cleverly in this scenario. Very, very early on Thursday, like a half hour into the day. I slept a little bit more. I'm hoping to get some more sleep and be able to make it out tomorrow. I don't know, but everything is just crushing me right now. Anyway, we'll see if my brain is able to work a little better right now. The fog I got, it's something that I commonly get when I nap, but I had been awake for a while, so I don't know. Anyway, trying to whittle around here, probably not going to destroy anything because it's not surrounded, but also really throwing the pressure on the Sardinians to the extent that I'm thinking they probably stayed too long trying to defend up there. And I don't know. Nasty. This calf can't retreat. Because calves, actually can retreat into the bridge. I was going to say calf's not allowed into the aqueduct, but they are allowed on the bridge spaces. Okay, never mind. Recovery rolls. Russian fire was fine. We disabled one artillery. We killed this one. But Russian melee did not go at all well. We got flung off the hill here, flung back here. Here we did make an advance. Did not kill anything. And that's going to put it on the French. Recovery, it's no big deal. We had a lot. But I'm beginning to think where I want my engineers right now is here. Because these hexes are of some importance, and I believe the engineers just right out negate the aqueduct. Yeah, it's considered a bridge hex, which means, I don't know, is it still an aqueduct for them attacking? It's not clear. I think it still is. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to help. The engineers are pretty close to useless. Yes, it's expensive to cross an aqueduct where there's no bridge. There are a lot of bridges, and it's not that terribly expensive. You know, it can be done. You can cross one hex to it no matter what. So, I don't know how big a deal it is. Anyway, I'm finding them kind of a worthless thing. I had a little bit of cheating here. I had a unit next to here. They could have retreated further back. Everything would have been just fine. But again, it's these units printed on the board that are problematic. Now, I could pay attention to try to hurt them. It's just, they disappear from my mind, especially when there's this much busyness with all the setup units and everything. It's not a good solution. I've complained about it plenty in Inkerman. I'm doing it here now, even though this one is not as bad. It's still bad enough. At least this one has the destruction counters in it. And it's time for the Sardinians to give up and fall back. There's no way that the French can win this one. There's just no way, right? It's just a question of, hey, what happens to the French army? In particular, there's victory points that are added for each undisrupted Russian unit south of the aqueduct is 2 points each, and that basically runs from over here down to here. So far they don't have any points from that, but that's what I'm trying to prevent them from getting now in terms of victory points. I'm giving up this. Look, I don't know if they get it or not, but I just can't hold against things here with this cutting through. So, yeah, I just don't know. Anyway, we got some fire coming, and there's enough artillery that it could cause some issues. We enter into turn 10. It's pretty hopeless. I mean, this is a game that if I were playing it opposed, I would be willing to call. But solo, you know, it's kind of fun watching the attempted withdrawals. I always have a special thing for those. And I know that, you know, it's not an interesting... Yeah, though the one, the Alma battle was a withdrawal, essentially. That's how you win it, as the Russians. But I'm not good at them, it appears. So, anyway. Much harder to fall asleep when it's nighttime. It's like, I know that I could pass out if it was daytime, but the fact and having to do stuff, having to go shopping and everything makes it all the more important and raises the stakes. Unfortunately, my battery didn't charge, so before I get back to the game and play another turn out for no good reason, I swap batteries. So the main push coming against the Sardinians over here, I don't want to be attacking from across the river, from the aqueduct, from any of that. So I'm kind of struggling, you know, with trying to get a grip on these, but I've got a pretty good grasp. I think this guy is in danger, but that's a hard area to fight in. It's reminding me of Saratoga for some reason. Elsewhere, look, I'm relying on my artillery superiority to keep plugging away at these. Over here, I just decided to do basically nothing. I'm tying these forces down. That's good enough. Okay, now the important thing for defensive fire, the one artillery that they had left, and it's only a horse artillery anyway, was disordered and didn't recover. So things should go pretty easily for us, I think, at least in terms of killing that unit. But I also have some artillery in place, still long range. I haven't decided to move it forward yet. The success we were hoping for. Here we pushed them back by firepower, but here it was the melee attacks that actually succeeded. Both of them were like 4-to-1 attacks. which pretty much guaranteed at least some kind of good result. And if there was nowhere to retreat to, a very good result. And I believe we were set up so that there was nowhere to retreat to. So the second hit against this guy actually would have destroyed him anyway. Seeing the casualties piling up there, just one Russian unit dead. And, you know, we got to give up space again. Try to defend the flank here, I guess. But the Russians can get units off the board if they want to, although they're having a better time killing stuff in a lot of ways. With a tiny slow withdrawal, you know, and everything else holding the same. This thing got hit, but it recovered. It recovers automatically. But these are not recovering automatically. And the withdrawal has to be slow because we're disordered, half movement allowance, something that I forgot in some of the other in the games after Alma, I guess, where movement allowance wasn't written on the counter. Well, here it is, 6 a.m. and still trying to force myself into sleep, and it's just not working. I don't know. Anyway, let's get some Russians moving, I guess. And we've made a massive repositioning trying to force our way through the canal and also push some guns forward here to put some additional pressure on the French flank over there. Russians are able to make some ground coming forward. I mean, this just ran away, but we killed a unit somewhere. I don't know where. I think this hex got driven away there. I don't know what the French can do. The Russian artillery making its way over, that's going to be stronger defensive fires against this position. We may not be able to hold this bridge, and again, that's one of the few terrain spots of any worth. We can't really reduce our effort over here by too much, or the Russians come over, but this side is just collapsing. The terrain we were defending in, we have to fall back from, but that puts us at risk. Over here I shifted everything over a little bit, and some cav I pulled back to help cover, but time for the Russians to shoot. After fire and recovery, not a lot happened. I mean, we had some effective counter battery fire that, you know, shut down guns, but that's it, really. At least I went shopping today. I'm not sure how I managed to wake up in time and still be kind of awake now. I'm fatigued, and on top of that, ice cream was cheap enough that I could justify it for the first time in a long time. Only a few flavors. They were holiday themed. I got an eggnog one that was like a mint, candy cane mint type thing, which sounds gross, and a pumpkin pie spice, which maybe I would have done, but the eggnog sounds closest to my taste. We gotta keep working on these. As to the rest of the stuff, you know, there's nothing I can do right now, and it's in progress. You know, mail is coming to me. I can get information from my brother and whatnot. So now that's on back burner. It doesn't have to, like, I guess the guy that I'm dealing with was you know, taking a couple of days off or something, but it definitely increased my angst in terms of, oh geez, you know, is he ignoring my emails now because I'm too much of a pain in the ass? If I had a working printer, I could just print it out, the page that I want, but unfortunately, he sent me an attachment of it. Unfortunately, my ink's not coming until Saturday, and it may not work. You know, I failed the last time I tried to load a new cartridge. Of course, it was an old new cartridge, like something that my wife ordered, so at least 5 years old, and I don't know how long they last. Let's play around with some Russians. I'm waiting for my I'm probably in place now. I'm waiting for something to happen in my game that I need to take care of, and then I'm going to shut that off and probably nap. Russian forces continue spilling across, trying to get around here. I'm not too worried. I could, take these out. They're worth points too, but right now my focus is on destroying the enemy army more than anything else. I just feel like that is actually the most important thing. These are part of the army, but they're scattered all over hell and creation. Getting some good artillery work and everything going on these would be useful. And these littler Russian units, you could think, oh, why don't you send one of them out? They don't do shit. They're just garbage. I'm kind of not even sure I want them moving around. They're taking up space and stuff. These guys, hey, look, they're doing their job. They're pinning those French down. If the French leave, then maybe I'll do something with them, either push them forward or head over. Probably push them forward. But I don't see any reason, like, facing this French force was not pleasant. So just staring them down seems like a perfectly reasonable thing to do. Of course, the Cav slipped away, but the French unit was destroyed. One of the French artillery here got destroyed by some lucky fire. I'm beginning to get enough concentration. Not everything can fire, but very soon it can. And honestly, I think I want to call it here simply because I don't think the French want to hold and keep fighting to defend this ground. This is not a bad time for me to stop. Yes, I could play a little bit more. I could maybe finish the game even before Friday. But I just don't see much point at this point. I add up all this damage. It's going to be a huge victory for the Russians no matter what. And it's just going to get worse. It's just going to get worse. The concentration of artillery placing itself here is going to drive me off these heights. What do I do? Well, I could fall back, and then the Russians move forward and position again. And there may even be enough time for me to start moving Russian units off the board, although killing the French is worth more, I guess. So I'm going to call this here simply because it's a blowout, and that, there's some interest in the withdrawal, but I've seen how it works in this system. I can get off the map with the French. That's no problem. I'm in a good position where I can fling myself back, but I can't save whatever this position is location-wise. It's been overrun. And then, whatever's here can be cleaned up after, if it doesn't evacuate or whatever. It can be cleaned up after the battle if the French are going to try to hold that and stay around. So I'm going to call the last of these, Tchernaya River, to an end. I don't know what you can do. Like, the option in the game is pro-Russian. It's to release, supposedly. It's to release these earlier, but it gives a shorter game, which maybe isn't as pro-Russian. The idea, I guess, being that the fatigue levels across the whole army aren't as high, but, like, it's not represented in a way that really reflects the reserves properly. There was some luck for the Russians. There's no question about that. There were some points where it looked like I didn't think that I could get through this. Eventually, though, I think you will get that luck. And it's not like it's not likely that you're gonna break on this defense. As long as you don't do what the Russians historically did, which is, I guess, attack across all fronts and not leave themselves with enough reinforcements and whatnot to keep taking stuff. This looks like it'll fall fairly easily. A frontal assault here looked really ugly. Really ugly. This was not pretty either, but I could outflank this. This I can't outflank. even with the engineers and whatnot, it would be really tough to. Like, I could see opportunities arising for it and everything. I thought the system, it was cool that the system's actually just being used almost straight up in this scenario. There's very little additional rules here, and none that withdrew anything from anything. It still had these stupid garrisons, which the on-map garrisons, I really don't like the way they work. I've seen games that have non-moving garrisons as counters. That makes a lot more sense. They were really, like, 100 counters per game is really skimping. Anyway, I will come back with a review of the system as a whole.